Governor Hickenlooper announced this week that he will not join the 24 states that are working to deny Syrian refugees in their states. He stated that Colorado will work with the federal government and Homeland Security to vet any individuals to maintain safety in the state. Now, Patty, we'll do another round about how other Republicans responded to Governor Hickenlooper, but let's start with his stance. Were you surprised he went out on this political limb?
Well, it's not that. It's a crowded political limb. Half the states are still saying they will accept refugees. I don't think it's a surprise at all when you think about it. This is still a country that was founded on immigration. I can absolutely see ramping up security, definitely taking closer looks at the people coming in. But let's remember where terrorism has already happened here. You have homegrown terrorists like Terry Nichols and Tim McVeigh. You didn't have to stop immigration to stop that. I mean, it was not going to happen. You have girls who are getting recruited via the internet who are in suburban Denver. Those are not people coming from Syria. Those are not refugees. Those are people who are here. In Europe, you see people who were raised in Belgium. They were not coming from Syria. They were not coming from the Middle East, and they too have been converted. So you just have to watch everywhere. But I don't think shutting our borders and defying what really founded this country is the solution. You just have to be more careful.
Mike, this is an international story that quickly became national and then local right here at our state. People ask themselves, oh gosh, here's this tragedy happening in France and this ongoing tragedy happening in Syria. Oh, wait a second, what does it mean if it's hitting our own neighborhood, our own state? What did you think of the stance Governor Hickenlooper took?
Well, I frankly wasn't surprised over the governor, as of late, has been aligning himself with the administration on quite a few things, like the EPA's Clean Power Plan, and now he wants to push back on Cynthia Kaufman for suing over it. Although it's interesting that he makes the case, one of the things he said when he was being interviewed was that, well, I have to follow federal law. And I said, well, actually, interestingly enough, while it doesn't look like any of these states who are taking the stance actually have the ability to deny entry to any of these refugees, this is a federal issue, they are under no obligation to actually cooperate in it. And so he's acting as though, well, I have no choice in the matter. If he wants to make his case, then make the case. Don't just claim, hey, the federal government says we got to do it, we got to do it. That's not so. They can't stop it. That doesn't mean states have to cooperate. And you would think that the Obama administration would want to sit down with all these governors and talk about their concerns, because he would want the cooperation of the states, including, by the way, the local tax dollars that will be expended on this.
Pan, you are our esteemed attorney at the table today, so I don't know about the legal points that Mike is making about what states can or can't do. It seemed odd that a state can decide no on a refugee thing, so that I understand where Mike's coming from there. What are some of the other legal ramifications to Hickenlooper's stance?
Frankly, I don't know. And in this context, states can do practically whatever they want to do in terms of whether they cooperate or not, or whether they implement the president's directive. The question then is, what's the remedy of the federal government to deal with the state that doesn't participate and cooperate? And I suspect, as a practical matter, it's none. You're not going to go after half of the states. I think the governor's decision is the right one, as I think the president's is. As a country, I think we're torn philosophically between whether we want to engage in the global community or whether we want to be isolationist. And I would think the circumstances in France teach us we can't be isolationist, because one way or another we're going to have to deal with these issues either on someone else's soil or on our own soil, because Patty raises the appropriate point. We've had homegrown terrorists before, and you can think of smaller examples of them. Some people may call them just gun violence incidents, but we've got some issues domestically we have to deal with that's not related to immigration. If you want to lead in the world, it's one thing to want to lead based on military might, but military might isn't always the most persuasive way to get people around to your way of thinking. And so sometimes you have to use other tools in the toolkit, so to speak, other than just military might, to persuade people to come along and work with you on the next issue, even if they disagree with you on this issue. So I think the president's doing the right thing. We've got to verify, we've got to use all of the resources in our capacity. But from what I've seen, most of these refugees are women and kids, and I don't know if they pose much of a threat to our safety.
Ben, do you think Governor Hickenlooper's decision on this issue is going to impact other Democrats locally, whether they be federal representatives or even just within the state legislature?
I don't think so. I think most Democrats seem to be relatively in alignment on this. You know, it's interesting watching all this play out, and the governor talks about we'll work with the federal government to make sure that we're vetting the people. You know, the United States spends $18 billion with a B a year on immigration-related security. So it strikes me that we're already doing a lot in that vein. We are a country of immigrants, and to start blocking access to people that are legitimate refugees is not only unpatriotic, but immoral. So I think the governor's stance is completely appropriate. I think it's a total acknowledgement of the history of the country. And I think, you know, the people that are sort of railing against it really ought to look in the mirrors and ask themselves where they came from. And we can look to Paris, to France, where they have, you know, the president of France has said, we're going to continue to allow the 50 or 150,000 Syrian refugees to come into our country. So I think that we have no excuse for trying to block people who have a legitimate humanitarian concern.